Welcome to this episode of our program Daily Debate. As usual, we will be discussing a contentious debate. Today we'll be speaking about the resilience of the Egyptian government to keep the economy booming despite the COVID-19. We'll also be shedding light on the Egyptian relations with the African continent at large and its keenness on boosting and propagating Africa, and keep on with its very distinguished relations with most of the African countries in a way that will serve the interests of all the continent at large. We'll be speaking about that. We'll be speaking about the leadership keenness on accelerating and progressing the developmental process, not just in Egypt, but also in Africa at large. We'll be speaking about that later on in our episode. Before we delve into our discussion, first let's have a top story of the day, and definitely the top story of the day is the second phase or the second stage of the Egyptian parliamentary elections, and polling stations in 13 governorates opened at 9 a.m. for citizens to cast their ballots on Monday and Tuesday in the runoff of the first stage of the House of Representatives elections. The vote, which is limited to candidates running under the individual candidacy system, ends at 9 p.m. on Tuesday. The governorates taking part in the stage's runoff vote are Giza, Fayoum, Beni Suef, Minya, Asyut, Al-Wadi, Jadid, Sohag, Qina, Luxor, Aswan, Alexandria, Bahira, and Matruh. A total of 220 candidates will be competing for 110 seats in these governorates, and in preparation for the voting process, polling stations were disinfected as a protective measure against the coronavirus crisis, and the armed forces and police are securing polling stations. Right, to highlight the second or the runoff of the House of Representatives elections, we have with us over the phone Mrs. Amira. Yes, hello, Mrs. Amira Saber, Member of Parliament. Good evening to you, and let me congratulate you first.
Thank you.
The last time you were here, we were speaking about the youth, right?
Yes, we are speaking about the youth and
their participation
in the politics and the political scene too.
So it's good to have you in this House of Representatives to be able to do what we were speaking about of the youth role, right?
Yeah. Thank you so much. I have won the elections, now acting as a member of the new parliament, and proudly a member of the CPYP as well.
Yes. Let me know from you, Mrs. Amira, how do you view the representation in this parliament? How do you view the role that is supposed to be played by different sectors of the society who are participating in this House of Representatives, and who the leadership themselves were very much keen on them being representing the society at large?
Yeah, I think the role of the youth is gonna be massive, especially that they are coming from different backgrounds, and then you think that most of them are actually politicians who have been into the political scene and of different backgrounds, from the far right to the far left. So I expect very engaging and serious political engagement happening during the next stage in the parliament. Also, I expect high-end topics being discussed because everyone is technically strong in certain files, ranging from culture, security, social solidarity, justice. Everyone has his edge. So I think there could be a kind of complementation and a kind of different political tracks inside the next parliament.
Right, the inclusion of youth, women are very much indeed important for this House of Representatives. Let me know, now this House of Representatives along with the Senate are taking part in the political life while we are in a very critical stage. How do you view challenges? What are the out-of-the-box solutions or views that you're seeing and the challenges that you are seeing at this upcoming stage?
Yeah, I think it's very obvious that during the upcoming stage we're facing massive external and internal challenges, especially after the COVID consequences, and that everyone is like seeking a job, worried about his future. So we are amidst many challenges. And that's why I'm hopeful as well, because youth being involved and women being involved, they are representative of massive sectors, like millions of them are behind them to be represented and to have their voices out. So I think the engagement of youth and women are going to draw the attention and the engagement of many, like hundreds of thousands of youth from universities, fresh graduates, even who are active in different fields, because it's about peer-to-peer learning experience. When I see a parliamentary member who is at the age of 20 or early 30s, I feel that he's close to what I care about. So I'll be like engaged in what's happening in my country, more active, more able to participate, and while I'm resting sure that there is someone to voice my concerns and to represent me. Same goes for the women. So that's why I'm actually very hopeful amid all the challenges which we're facing.
Right, Ms. Amira Saber, Member of Parliament, we thank you again for being with us. And we have all our hopes and aspirations in the hands of this coming House of Representatives and the Senate altogether. We are hoping that the performance of those two chambers would really help, along with the leadership in maintaining the challenges the country are facing. Now we move on to our topic of the day, and before we start with our discussion, let's first have a quick look on this report and President Sisi Lode's government's achievements amid the coronavirus pandemic. Let's watch.
Abdel Fattah al-Sisi praised on Saturday the achievements made by the Egyptian government despite the coronavirus pandemic. The president wrote on his official Facebook page, "I would like to thank the government for the positive economic indicators it has achieved this year despite the coronavirus crisis and its dire consequences." He added, "Those efforts have been commended by major international financial institutions, topped by the IMF's experts' declaration that the Egyptian economy has exceeded expectations and showed resilience during the pandemic due to the strict implementation of the economic reform program." The president also extended his regards to the Egyptian people for supporting the government and the economic reforms. It's worth mentioning that during the last 6 years, Egypt managed to complete a lot of national mega projects in a very short period, including the establishment of the world's biggest power plants for conventional and renewable energy in a new administrative capital equivalent to twice the size of Cairo. According to the World Economic Agencies, Egypt during the pandemic has been the only country in the Middle East to achieve a positive growth rate of 3.9%, and that makes it one of the fastest growing economies. Over the last 6 years, inflation rates were lowered from 33% to 4%, and the unemployment rate ranged from 13% to 7.2%, while the budget deficit went down to 7.3% from 14%.
تعرف ان لكل عضو في مجلس النواب الحق في توجيه استجواب لرئيس مجلس الوزراء ونوابه او لاحد الوزراء ونوابهم لمحاسبتهم عن كافة الشؤون التي تدخل ضمن نطاق اختصاصهم والتي تتعلق بحياة المواطن المصري.
تجتمع سنويا على هذه الأرض، أرض مصر، نقطة تلاقي الحضارات. نرسل رسالة إلى كل شعوب العالم المحبة للسلام والتي تعلي من قيم الإنسانية. لا فرق بين عرق أو لون أو دين، فنحن هنا جميعا سفراء لها. ننبذ التطرف والعنف ونتخذ من اختلافاتنا دافعا للتعاون والتكامل لا للصراع والحرب. مصر التي وقفت وتصدت بحزم لقوى الشر والظلام نيابة عن العالم، واستبسل شبابها في الدفاع عن قيم الإنسانية. شباب وقف شامخا صامدا مدافعا عن شرفه وبلده، ليعلم البشرية كلها كيف يكون إنكار الذات وكيف تكون التضحية بكل غال ونفيس من أجل قيمة أسمى وهدف أنبل.
Welcome back, and I have all the pleasure to have with me tonight our distinguished, very distinguished guest, Dr. Amany Ashour, the president of the Africa Business Council, and shall I say congratulations?
Thank you.
Yes, and before I start with any of my scripts, let me take it from here and taking Africa, or the presidency of the Africa Business Council, and it's such an honor to have you, just as you were elected, and a woman, an Egyptian woman representing Egypt, taking the presidency of such a huge council. You tell me all about it, please.
My pleasure. The Africa Business Council is just launched this week within the Africa Industrialization Week. All the private sector came together. It has been really a dream that we were aspiring as private sector, and thanks to the African Union Commission, to the Coalition of Africa Dialogue, that they facilitated our meetings as private sector. It's been 1 year that we have been really meeting to put the constitution of the Africa Business Council, the objectives, and how it could be the premier voice of the Africa private sector. It will include all the regional economic community business council, like COMESA Business Council, SADC Business Council, the ECOWAS Business Council, Central Africa Business Council, even within the North Africa Business Council. It will include all the regional economic communities, and it will also have the sectorial organizations like manufacturers, like industries, and continental organizations like chambers of commerce, private sector federations, Union of Industries, Manufacturers Association. So it will be the premier voice of all the private sector, including corporates and small and medium enterprises, and the sectorial, which is also for women and youth, because it is really a line of engagement with our African leaders and with the African Union. So it is now, it's already established, and thank God I am honored to be elected the chair of the president of this very huge Africa Business Council, because within the structure, our objective really is about empowering our Africa private sector. It's about how this Africa private sector will be an advocacy platform with the governments, and that's why its direct relation with the African Union is very important. We are currently, our secretariat is within the African Union, and it is really about having technical committees. Those technical committees will cover all the areas that we are, a private sector, infrastructure, energy, agriculture, agribusiness, mining and industries. All the technical committees will be chaired by sectorial organization within the continent to make sure that we are really going on the right track to have harmonization among our private sector, to have position papers for lobbying with the African heads of states and leaders, to make sure that our platform will have business linkages to increase our intra-Africa trade. Actually, it will be the implementing agency for the Africa Continental Free Trade Agreement, because now with the launch of Africa Continental ACFTA, which will be operationalized on the January 1st, with the African Union Summit, it is about the private sector has a role. So our Africa Business Council will be the implementing partner to see how we implement our Africa trade, to see how we have also for digital economy, because this is very important, the digital economy, and how we already launched what we call the Sukuku Africa. It's the platform, Africa Trade Group, about a digital platform. Our Sukuku in Swahili means souk, means market. So this digital platform is our Alibaba. It's about our Amazon, you see, but it will all have made in Africa products, and the companies all over Africa will register its products within this platform. So the main objective of our Africa Business Council is to promote our African industries, to promote our value addition with reference to raw materials, to make sure that we empower the women and youth on the ground, the small and medium enterprises, because this is a real passion to me and it's very important. And on all things, how to have the fourth industrial revolution of digital economy to empower our people on the ground and to make sure of financial inclusion. We make sure that our Africa Business Council is really the channel that could empower all our Africa private sector.
Dr. Amany, you have opened an immense number of questions out of the box and out of the script and out of everything. Now we start from the beginning of what you said, that you were elected during the industrialization day. And I guess that industries in Africa is something that we need very much to boost and give all the proper boost that it needs. Tell me all about this day, and tell me how will this new Africa Business Council deal with industries in Africa?
Well, this is very important because you know that we just finished the Africa Industrialization Week on the 20th of November. 20th of November is our Africa Industrialization Day, and we had several heads of states, His Excellency, the President of Niger, Mohamed Issoufou, who is the champion for the Africa Continental Free Trade Agreement, and we had several heads of states really championing the African industries. Within the whole Africa, we know we have natural resources, but in order to boost our industrialization, we had also a sectorial organization that is focusing on industries. That is why it is very important what Africa Business Council will have a special sectorial committee for industries that will make a mapping exercise within the whole 55 African states to make sure that what is the opportunities of investment within the industries within these countries, what is the raw material that is present to have add value to it, to link it with scientific research and technology, to link it with real value addition, and to make sure that we have centers of excellences like hubs so that, for instance, we can do one part in one part of Africa, the other part in another part of Africa, and then we have real industries that will not compete with each other but complement each other. Together with the infrastructure, that because we need energy, so we need, and so in order to have factories. So on the 30th of November, there will be the Ministers of Trade and Industry that will be having their meetings. And within this, the Africa Business Council will play a role. We will pledge as private sector that we will invest within the African continent in industrialization, in infrastructure, in energy, in all the proper investment that will boost our industrialization. So when we promote our intra-Africa trade, we will promote a strong African product which is made in Africa.
Also, as you spoke about the operation, or the first operation of the African Continental Free Trade Area that was signed during the Egyptian presidency to the African Union. and this is supposed to be taking place starting January. So we need to understand what and how did we prepare as private sectors, as private councils, and also as the Egyptian government for such an important event that we as Egyptian has worked hard for it.
It's very important, this question, because to operationalize the Africa Continental Free Trade Area, the governments, they put the policies, they put the legislation, but the private sector is the one who to implement these policies. So in order, one of the role of the Africa Business Council is to really lobby with the governments to have incentives for the private sector, to make sure that the private sector we have a conducive environment for investment, for industrialization, in order to boost our intra-Africa trade. Because when we have incentives for investment, it will have a better result on the cost of the product. If we have incentives for infrastructure and energy, then it will also lessen the cost and will make sure that we increase our intra-Africa trade. Africa Continental Free Agreement ratified and signed by almost African countries. Then this time it will be operationalized in January. To be operationalized, we need to have harmonization among the whole legislation. It will, for instance, if we take COMESA, which is the Common Market for East and Southern Africa, 21 countries, they already proceeded and have a long journey for harmonization and for the waiving of the customs and for the certificates of origin within the 21 countries of COMESA. Now it will be the 55 countries of Africa. How to harmonize all the customs, to harmonize the trade negotiation, the agreements with each other as 55 countries. So under the African Union, now we have 8 regional economic blocks, which is the COMESA, the SADC, which is South Africa Development Community, the ECOWAS, which is the economic communities for the West Africa states. We have the Central African states, where we have the ICAS, we have the IGAD, we have the OMA, which is Union for Maghreb, we have the SINSAD, which is Sahel and Sahara. So the 8 economic blocks now have to merge together to be a one block in order to operationalize the Africa Continental Free Trade Area. Now all the ministers of trade and industry, as I mentioned, they will be meeting on the 30th of November to come together in order to prepare for this, for the operationalization of the Africa Continental Free Trade Area.
I have to say that you are working with 2 hats right now, because you're the Secretary General of the COMESA Business Council.
No, I am the chair now of the Trade
and
Promotion
of
Committee COMESA Business Council, and now I am the chair for Africa Business Council.
Exactly. So I guess that you were working in 2 of or you've been working in one of the most important African blocs as the Secretary General.
As the chair, I was the chair for COMESA Business Council for 2 terms. Also, when we started the COMESA Business Council, it was only a program under COMESA Secretariat. And I was really the vice president, then I became president, then twice. So now COMESA Business Council is a fully fledged institution that have a lot of programs and a lot of projects that we did it. Now it's another step to be the chair for the Africa Business Council that is just launched. And then it is my, now as just the first interim chair, we have now to see how we are going to have this institution, a fully fledged institution, to be inclusive with all the private sector within the African continent, to make sure that with this Africa Business Council, I have outreach to all the private sector, whether this private sector will be the business councils, the chambers of commerce, the private sector federations, the chambers of commerce, the manufacturing industries, the agro-business industries, the mining organization, all of them coming under one roof to be the Africa Business Council. So we have to be inclusive. Plus, we have also to have outreach to the young entrepreneurs, to the cross-border women traders, to the women agribusiness in the remote areas within the whole Africa. we have to be inclusive for all the sectors of society, private sector, not only for the big corporates or not only for the big industries, but for even the informal sector, how to really approach them, how to approach small and medium enterprises, because it constitutes more than 90% of our African economy is small and medium enterprises.
Yes.
How can a business, the cross-border women traders are between one country and another. For instance, personally, when I was chair for COMESA Business Women Association, I made a questionnaire. Personally, I went between the borders between Djibouti and Ethiopia to question the cross-border women traders. I went between the borders between Zambia and Zimbabwe, between Egypt and Sudan, to see what are these women they want from us, as what to advocate for them. They needed training about the COMESA certificate of origin because they don't know anything about it. They need from us capacity building. They need from us a one-stop shop, a one-border cross-border customs. So the needs of our people on the ground is very important.
Here you pinpointed your finger twice on the same issue, what the people need and how instead of competing as African countries we can complement each other. And those two areas need lots and lots of difficult work. So exactly how to reach such an issue, what do we need here? I mean here, fulfill the aspiration of the different segments of the African continent at large, and at the same time, in terms of countries, of states, to be complementary to each other instead of competing each other, so we can reach or further reach out to other to the whole world.
It is very important what you said, because our strategy actually for the whole empowerment of the private sector, I call it the triad of empowerment, which is really based on 3 pillars, and it's the 3 pillars everywhere. First, the people. That's number 1. How can we empower the people, give them training, have vocational training, make skilled labor, make sure that we invest in our human resources with reference to how they deal with financial inclusion, which is very important, how to start their businesses, how they grow their businesses, how we educate them in different sectors. If it's mining, how we have a skilled labor for cutting the stones. If it's agriculture, how we can have them agribusiness. If it is anyway, how the people. Second pillar is the policy. How can we promote for a policy to have incentives for our private sector? We are now advocating for 2 very important policies, the public procurement and the financial inclusion. Public procurement, it is very important. For instance, if we take women entrepreneurs, public procurement within the world is $15 trillion. Women have only 1% access, which is not at all, which is important.
Satisfying.
So
yes.
Now what we are, even me as I was heading the COMESA Business Council, I asked the heads of states and the governments to have a special preferential treatment for small and medium enterprises with reference to public procurement, because every time the government have their purchases, their tenders, they give it to multinational companies. It is time that we have a special percentage for SMEs. And now in Kenya, President Uhuru Kenyatta took it on his shoulder, and we have an affirmative action that 30% of all government procurement in Kenya goes to SMEs, women, youth, and people with disabilities. So did Ramaphosa, who is currently the chair of the African Union, the president of South Africa. He, in his acceptance speech after he took over from His Excellency President El-Sisi, he said that we want at least 30% of all government procurement goes to SMEs and women-owned business. In South Africa, he implemented 40% of all government procurement goes to SMEs. Here in Egypt, we have a 20% of all government procurement goes to SMEs, but no special preferential to women or youth. So what we are also really advocating for is that this 20% could be 10% for women and 10% for men, which will be gender equality according to our constitution, and it will give a great affirmative action with reference to the SMEs owned businesses. So the public procurement is across the whole continent, how we have it, to our local private sector, not to multinational companies. The second issue is financial inclusion. How do we have financial inclusion to have a special targeted program to SMEs, access to credit? How can we finance them? The third pillar really is product development. And product development is about having a strong, competitive African product, value-added packaging, designing, branding, to have a trademark, to have intellectual property. If we want to promote our intra-Africa trade and operationalize the Africa Continental Free Trade Area, we need to have a competitive African product which is according to the standard, international standards. So that is really a great role for the Africa Business Council there to see what is present on the ground, how we, as you said, complement our efforts in order to make sure that we empower our Africa private sector.
Before we move on and we get to our relations and cooperation with African countries, particularly South Africa, which is taking the presidency of this year's African Union. First, let's have this quick report on President Sisi commends IMF review of Egypt's economic performance. Let's watch.
تعرف أن الدستور 2014 في المادة 151 منه ألزمت السلطة التنفيذية بضرورة الحصول على موافقة مجلس النواب قبل إبرام أي معاهدة أو اتفاقية، وده لأول مرة يحصل في تاريخ الدولة المصرية.
President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi expressed his satisfaction with the recent International Monetary Fund's praise for the performance of the Egyptian economy amid the outbreak of the pandemic. Presidential spokesman Bassem Radi said that President al-Sisi's statements came during his meeting with the Prime Minister, Finance Minister and Deputy Finance Minister for Financial Policies. President al-Sisi also praised the good governance and comprehensive stimulus measures, as well as the accurate implementation of the economic reform program in the past years. Earlier, head of the IMF team said that the Egyptian economy had exceeded expectations even during the crisis. She pointed that containment measures supported by the authorities' effective crisis management and strong implementation of their policy program helped mitigate the effects of the COVID-19 crisis. She added that after recording a growth rate of 3.6% in the fiscal year 2019-2020, growth is projected to reach 2.8% in the fiscal year 2020-2021, with a modest recovery in major sectors. She added that the Central Bank of Egypt's monetary policy remains appropriately accommodative. In this regard, the IMF welcomes the CBE's recent interest rate cuts to further support economic recovery amid muted inflation. Head of the IMF team concluded by saying that the exchange rate has modestly appreciated in the wake of an increase in capital inflows. Continued exchange rate flexibility will help absorb external shocks. Egypt's banking system remains liquid, profitable and well capitalized.
Right, welcome back, and back to you, Dr. Amany. And we were speaking about a very recent phone call that took place between President Sisi and the South African President Ramaphosa. And Egypt, in this phone call, President Sisi confirmed Egypt's continued to boost relations or bilateral relations from one side with South Africa, from one part, and definitely Egypt's keenness to boost cooperation with the African continent at large. Here, the South African president said that South Africa really wants to further cooperate or increase its cooperation with Egypt, to meet the aspirations of the African people at large. We're speaking here about an Egyptian role that Egypt has been playing. How do you view this role? How do you view Egypt's role throughout the the very recent period, definitely throughout history, but also during the recent period, and its role in this upcoming stage?
First, let me tell you that I always say that Egypt and the tip of Africa, north of Africa, and South Africa and the tip of Africa at the south of Africa.
Yes.
And I always, in many of our conferences, the African Congress for Women Entrepreneurs, we had a lot of initiatives, we call it From Cairo to Cape for Economic Integration of Africa. Because Egypt is an industrial country, so is South Africa. So if
That's a strong slogan.
Yes, from Cairo to Cape for economic integration of Africa, because with the two tips up and the two top at the top, tip of Africa down, tip of Africa up, so it is really about how you embrace the 55 countries within the African continent and how this bilateral relation could be on a very cooperative base and on a really complementary, and it goes with the line with what we have been saying, because there are a lot of industries within South Africa, so is Egypt. We want to have, as I mentioned, mapping exercise with reference to, for instance, the role of Egypt is very important. Still now, pharmaceutical companies, they are bringing, many African countries bringing their pharmaceuticals from India and China. So is also when the COVID happened, many of the member African states, they got their medical supplies and consumers from China. There is a lot, we have here in Egypt 486 manufacturers for medical disposables and consumables. How can we promote this within the whole African continent? We have 165 pharmaceutical industries. How can we promote this to the African continent? And on the other hand, how can we have investment? Because I told you, as Africa Business Council, we need to invest in Africa. How can our business people really invest within the African continent on a win-win situation? Investment so that it will have boost the industrialization Africa, boost our intra-Africa trade, and within the whole issue, if you have investment, for instance, now, if anybody invests in the COMESA region, they can export to all the COMESA region with no customs. And now with the Africa Continental Free Trade Agreement, then you will have anybody invest in Africa can export within the whole Africa. So we have hubs. For instance, if you invest in one part in the south, then you can export around the whole countries around it. Within the whole, you don't need to have planes, but it will be by buses, by cargo, by train. So the infrastructure is very important in order to boost the intra-Africa trade. Our scientific expertise as Egypt, it's a big role that we can export our scientific expertise with reference to many sectors, with reference to agriculture, agribusiness, with reference to all the sectors that need industrialization. Our scientific research can make projects. Institutes can make with Kenya, can make with South Africa, can make with other scientific research institutes within the continent in order to have our own projects that will help our industries, that will solve our problems. We don't need Western companies to come and solve our problems. It's African solutions can come for our African problems. But we need to, as I mentioned, to have this cooperation. I always say this cooperation, it's coordination, it's commitment, it's coming together. You know, it's really about how we have mapping exercise on the existing resources on the continent. And I know all the time we always say, cocoa is in Africa, but the chocolate is in Switzerland.
Yes,
you see?
Indeed.
And the coffee is in Africa, but the Starbucks
Lavazza
is everywhere.
is outside.
Yes, so we don't have to. But what we say is that we have to have our own branding. You see, branding for African products, trademarks for African products, intellectual property of our African products based on a scientific industries that we, as you mentioned, we have a big role to play in the African continent. We always played our role, but we really need to see how we cooperate among our colleagues within the whole Africa.
Here, yes, indeed, we need African solutions for the African problems. But when we see how the world look into our achievement in terms of Africa, I'm speaking, and definitely Egypt part of it. The World Bank here has highlighted the African Continental Free Trade Area Agreement as a model of trade integration that will connect 1.3 billion people and have a combined of $3.4 trillion. How do you view this agreement? How is the world seeing that agreement? How is the world seeing such an important agreement that will combine all the 54, or hopefully 55 all together countries, African countries together?
First, as you mentioned, all the world, not only the World Bank, everybody in the world, the European Union, everybody is looking for now how they will deal with Africa. How it will be the biggest trade area within the whole world with 1.2 billion people. It will be a real investment for everybody. I know now some people from Western companies are calling me and calling my friends to come and invest in Africa because it's a huge opportunity if they have factories within Africa that they can export within the whole Africa without customs. And this is a very, very big competitive edge for them. If they come to invest in Cairo here, so they will be able to export for all the Comesa region, but now for all Africa together. So the world is looking really very cautiously, and they are expecting us to really, how are we going to do with this? We are going to implement it, and if we implement the Africa Trade Agreement, I mean, what product we have in order to trade among us? Are they going to bring from China to trade it within Africa? No. The main objective of the ACFTA is to have an African product that we trade it among ourselves. We don't need to go outside the continent. And with our scientific
So we're speaking here
expertise,
about raw materials that are being transferred into products within the African continent, instead of they take our raw materials and manufacture it and re-export it to us.
A value addition, that is the exact, and increasing our role in the global supply chain. So we need our people to have all the talents and all the expertise. As I mentioned, the human resources, we train them. You know, take the diamonds, take the gemstones, take everything. The diamonds, the tanzanite, it goes to Europe in order to be cut, or in some parts within in India, or some. Now Botswana started, which is very good, to cut their own stones. But the main issue is really how do we have skilled labor to do that in order to make it. That's a very small example, but apart from this, all the other natural resources, how we can add value to it to be an end product, and then we export it as an end product.
Dr. Amany, I have just 1 minute left for me here, and I need a real message, a real aspiration from you to how do you view Africa at this upcoming stage? Africa
is the rising. Africa is the coming, not tiger, the coming lion, the coming. It is by its people, by its African private sector, by allying together. It has a great, great, great future, but we need our heads of states, our African leaders, to have a conducive environment and policies to empower our people of Africa and the private sector, including women, youth, and SMEs.
Dr. Amany Ashour, President of the Africa Business Council. Again, congratulations. It was really a pleasure having you, the first program to have you after assuming such a post. We hope to see Egypt with its prominent figures as you are leading all the world, not just African places. We thank you so much for being with us tonight.
My pleasure. It's always a pleasure to be in the Daily Debate. Thank you
so much. And dear viewers, many thanks for watching. Tomorrow will be another important debate with another colleague. Good night.